start things off. Kevin, how long have you been in the business?
I did my first story in '81, it was published in '82, so almost 30, well, yeah, next month, I guess, 30 years.
You should have a party. Yeah.
Should.
I've been in comics for 21 years, and I use every minute of that as a stick to beat over the heads of people when I'm having arguments. Like, he'll sit there and go, Captain America's shield should be this shape, and I'll go, oh, well, I've been in 21 years, so, you know. But who was your first work for?
For Marvel. It was actually a really good assignment. I wasn't ready for it, but it was a really good assignment because growing up, I wasn't a big Marvel fan. I mostly read DC comics, but I loved Doctor Strange, and so they needed a fill-in issue penciled Doctor Strange, and gave me like 30 days to pencil it. I said, I've never actually drawn a comic before. Maybe this wouldn't be such a good starting, you know, maybe a short story or something without a deadline or whatever, but they just threw me in feet first and did the best I could.
Well, I can tell from, you know, all the times I've bought your comics that you've just done the covers for and ripped the insides out and put them in my parrot cage.
And people do that with your covers all the time as well.
You know, I had some guy actually bring up my entire run of Catwoman and Wonder Woman insideless. Like they were just literally skinned comic books, and I went, "Wow, that stack is really small. I thought my runs were longer than that." He went, "No, I took the insides out." But when you did several years later, you were doing the covers for Strange Tales, which had Cloak and Dagger and Doctor Strange.
Right.
And I had grown up when I was a kid. I had this really great paperback from the 1970s. They would reprint early Marvel Age stuff, like the first 6 issues of the Fantastic Four, the first 6 issues of the Hulk. In these little paperbacks, regular paperback size, great printing, way better colors than the original comics. So I had actually grown up, I had a copy of the first, you know, I don't know how many, you know, because Strange Tales was always 2 stories, right? From day one, from back to the dawn of time, it was always multiple stories. But I'd grown up really liking Doctor Strange, especially the Ditko stuff.
Right.
And one of the things I hate is when an artist goes and draws a traditional, well-loved character and then draws it in the style of the original artist. I always call that digging up Jack Kirby's corpse and dancing with it and then putting it back when you're done. And a friend of mine once said, you know, like there's people that will draw, you know, the Hulk or the Fantastic Four or Captain America, and they do it in a Jack Kirby style, as opposed to being brilliant on their own and bringing their own style to it. A friend of mine once said, if you're going to emulate Jack Kirby, don't emulate the way he draws hands, you emulate his pioneer spirit. And I thought that was the most profound thing that ever came out of that friend's mouth, because he really wasn't the smartest guy. I was looking for the puppet master in that situation. And what I loved about your take on Doctor Strange was you actually evoked that otherworldliness that made Ditko's stuff so creepy. Like, you know, the early Spider-Mans had a weird quality. Spider-Man was not this heroic, muscular guy. He was this really skinny, weird guy stuck to your ceiling. And you walk in and go, Spider-Man, you know, call the exterminators. And, you know, the world that Ditko created for the original Doctor Strange stuff, that's one of the reasons why I was ripping those covers off and keeping them and loving them was you had a wonderful feel for that. And was that intentional, or were you just sort of like having fun drawing Doctor Strange in your own style?
I was just having fun, because a lot of time there'd be, on those covers, there'd be, you know, monsters and stuff like that. And because Doctor Strange, you know, never really felt like a Kirby character, which I probably, at that time especially, would have had a lot of trouble with. Just, I like Kirby's work, I just don't think I can ever get those qualities to come through in my own work in such a, I don't know, such a different mindset or something.
Yeah, but but you know, there is that tendency for a lot of people, if they can draw like their heroes, they tend to do it, even if it's unconsciously. Right. And it's a shame when, you know, an artist who is so brilliant will actually do themselves a disservice by not speaking in their own voice. They're actually speaking in the voice of their hero.
Right.
And another friend, not the once insightful friend I just mentioned, pointed out when I was complaining, like, why is this guy drawing like Jack Kirby? He draws so beautifully.
Yeah.
You know, he said, yeah, it's kind of like Eric Clapton just joining Beatlemania. You're kind of going, kind of a waste of talent to actually have one genius emulate another genius.
Yeah.
But, so you really enjoyed working on Doctor Strange. What other characters do you like?
I enjoyed those covers that came a little later. Yeah, the first issue, I was so lost. I had no, that's, like I said, just jumping in feet first to drawing your first comic story, and it's something that's actually going to be published. And that was a tough way to break in, where I really hadn't done anything yet. I mean, I'd done some pinups and some layouts to show the editors and stuff like that. But yeah, by the time I was doing those covers, I was starting to get a little confidence and figure some things out. But yeah, that first story was just a disaster.
So your early work was for Marvel. Did you
penciling from Marvel.
pencil? When did you start taking the reins of your own inks?
Mainly on those covers. After I did the Doctor Strange, I did a few issues of Moon Knight, and they kept assuring me I could ink those pencils if I would just get the pencils done on time, and that never happened. So I worked with inkers on those Moon Knight stories. But then after that, doing covers for Marvel for Carl Potts, he'd let me ink them, and even after a few covers, let me do my own color guides and stuff.
Oh yeah, and
that made a big difference.
I
You can understand.
Oh no, well, no,
but
but I've always loved your colors, and when you started taking control of your own covers. But see, today when we do comic books, covers, interiors, whatever, they're all colored on a computer, and usually what's happening is you're creating the 4-color separations. I mean, they take your colors, and it's actually in CMYK mode. Each of those color channels relates to a printing plate when they make the actual book come out. And we have millions of colors at our selection. But back in the day, when you were doing those color guides, we had something like 280 colors.
Yeah, you had three tints of each primary color, or magenta, cyan, and yellow, and any combination from those. So you can do the math. It's not a huge palette.
It's not a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of the greatest artists all throughout history. There's a reason why genius oil painters all throughout time will figure out their colors in advance, squirt them on their little palette, and go, these are the only colors I'm allowed to use right here, because it forces you to make really creative decisions and come up with wonderful solutions.
Yeah.
I always loved your solutions because you seem to be allergic to primary colors. And
up to a point, but magenta, I'd love to use magenta without the yellow, so it wouldn't be red, it would be sort of a pink color.
But in traditional color theory, red, yellow, and blue. Red meaning like a crimson or a scarlet, not in the printing sense of the word. I love that unless you were doing Superman, you would always pick, and the adjective we always ascribe to Kevin's colors is sour.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Because for Superman, you take the yellow wouldn't be solid yellow, because especially when they started printing offset, that solid yellow would just blind you. It was so bright. So you'd either do a tint, or maybe add a little blue tint to that, or and then the red, you add a little blue to that as well, and then red to the blue.
But you always had a wonderful use of those secondary and tertiary colors, those really neutralized palettes. You would even use K-tones from time to time. No? It's
on the newsprint books with some Zipatone.
Zipatone, right.
Yeah.
Well, he did a wonderful, The Secret Origin of Man-Bat is one of my favorite things you've ever done. You did it with...
Yeah, there's a bunch of Zipatone, because there's a scene that takes place in total darkness.
Yeah.
And to show that, I used a lot of Zipatone.
It was entirely in gray values.
Yeah.
What's the writer's name?
Jan Sternod.
Jan Sternod. I've never been able to pronounce that.
Yeah, it's like it's spelled. But
Really?
It's hard to remember how it's spelled.
Okay, so it's like Wojo.
It looks like it's
okay.
a typo.